What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, and today we continue our standard bad arc, but you see, with a positive twist once again because I am insufferable. You see, Igby, over the last week or so, we've had some heartfelt moments talking about the cards in this standard, the ones that I like and the ones that I don't really much care for either. But what we haven't talked much about is the decks in this format, which tend to be the real problem because although there are a variety of good, strong, and wise decks in standard right now, which is usually the mark of a decent, nice little mixed standard, right? But the issue lies in the fact that every single strong deck right now is not only super boring to play against, but also kind of super boring to play with. You know, I guess I'll cast Invoke Despair again. Do I win? All right, cool, I guess. Nothing means anything anymore. So, you know, it becomes an issue when you get bored playing one of the strongest decks in standard. And actually, you got bored like a month and a half ago. However, class, there is still a faint glimmer of light left because there are still some decks in this format that give me hope and keep me playing this smoldering crater of an environment. And that's what today's all about in it, Igby. So let's take a look at my 3 favorite decks to play in one standard. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back, so let's whip out my decks. Like I said, we're going to look at 3 of them, all kind of deck tech style, the way you like it, with me standing here like a goober doing like a, hey, have you ever noticed this guy looks like a fish or whatever I'm going to end up saying. So we're going to do it in the kind of typical deck tech style, but in between each deck, we're going to send it over to Arena Dev. So he's going to do like an overview thing, kind of. You can take a screenshot, deck list in the description, whatever you want to do, cowboy. But why don't we hit you with that first deck? I bet you're ready for it by now, aren't you? Now, this deck should prove that I am sometimes, occasionally, a serious person. And although I really like synergy, and this deck has a lot of it, don't worry, my favorite energy is Winergy. Very dumb joke, yes, but it's just to set up the point that all 3 of today's decks are actually capable of winning games. You might think that I'm who I am, and I would just present you with a bunch of stupid-looking janky piles, which I'm kind of going to do, but all 3 of these stupid-looking janky piles actually win games because, you see, these are all decks that I like to play and have fun with, and part of having fun and liking to play a deck is winning games with it. So although none of these are meta decks or net decks, you're not going to see them too often on the ladder or anything, they are also very capable of actually winning games of Magic, and none other, in a way, than the first deck I'm going to show you, which is Mono White Artifact Aggro. This is a deck that I've been excited about for multiple seasons now. I've been building Azorius Aggro for what feels like 2 years or something, a long time, but that deck has been okay, and I was especially excited when Unctus got previewed in the newest set, and I put that card right in, and I was not very impressed, so I decided to do something just outright bananas and cut the blue entirely from the deck, and it's never performed better. That's right, it sounds preposterous. You lose cards like Urza, who is a massive Anthem effect, but he costs 4 mana. What am I'm paying 4 mana for a card in my aggro deck. You're not a Thundering Raiju. Get out of here, Urza. And Unctus also looks like a pretty good Anthem effect, but it just turns out these cards end up being a bit win more. And when you cut it down to just white, you streamline things, you make it faster, leaner, meaner, and you have a lot fewer you got a lot fewer manner problems. You can say please and thank you more often. No, you have less mana problems if you just cut it down to white, and that makes a world of difference too. You also cut a lot of not only top-end fat, but like awkward top-end fat when you cut them 3 and 4 drop legendary dudes from your deck, and it allows you to play a lot more 1 and 2 drops. So let's take a look at those, right? We got things like Yoshin Frontliner and Fox McCloud, the old hot shot mechanic, right? Stuff that you might expect to see in the deck in the 1-drop slot to get really, really aggressive and play through sweepers and stuff like Frontliner can. But we got a few new cards in the 1-drop slot now, like Swooping Lookout as a 3 of, and we even got a couple of Skrelvs in this deck. There are a couple of like really important creatures in this deck to protect, and Skrelv helps not only do that, but it's a 1 mana artifact that contributes to our attacking board state. Like, all of these things are amazing in a deck where like 3 or 4 of the cards care about casting or playing artifacts. So just having yet another 1-drop artifact creature is great. Same is true for Swooping Lookout, obviously. There's a couple of great tricks with this. First of all, Vigilant, so it can't be hit by Wandering Emperor ever. That really matters when you're looking for where to put that bonus from Michiko's Reign of Truth or whatever. So this thing can actually get through for a buttload of damage sometimes and still stay up to take a chump block. Now, the 2-drop slot has some new cards. cards. We've got 4 Patchwork Automaton. May have realized that. Not a new card at all. You probably know we want that. But we've also got 4 Mandible Justiciar in the deck. Probably the freakiest looking card in the entire deck, right? But this is kind of a Patchwork Automaton if we don't get our Patchwork Automaton. And for what it's worth, it's really, really good against mono red if it gets to block or attack, whichever one, right? If it just soaks up a play with fire or lightning strike or whatever, I guess at least it did that, you know, but if this gets to actually like deal combat damage in a game against mono red, it feels so good because usually it trades with something if it blocks and you gain the life and you don't take the damage you would have otherwise taken. But on attacks, again, great target for Mtg's Reign of Truth. Great thing to give flying with a Steel Seraph or something like that. Great thing to give vigilance with a Steel Seraph some of the time, depending on the board state, because that life can really matter in some key races in standard right now. Mandible Justiciar is one of the reasons why I like playing this aggro deck more than I like playing mono red, because this deck tends to beat mono red. Not only is Justiciar really good, but they have a hard time targeting the Automaton with their play with fires and strangles and lightning strikes and blah 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 too, unless they want to spend their entire turn, and they usually don't. But there's really brand new cards like all throughout this entire deck, even in the 3-drop slot. You know, we've got Steel Seraph. It's not super new or anything, but I've already mentioned it, so I might as well tell you about it. Again, very important in the mono red matchups. But you know what else is? NX Sentry. Can't get killed by Lightning Strike and takes care of virtually every creature in the deck unless they're playing Thundering Raiju. So, you know, there's a counter to everything, right? But still, this will take out most creatures in most matchups, actually. There are some key creatures it doesn't really mess with, but still, when you're just trying to get through damage and clear up your opponent's side of the board so you can turn your guys sideways, NX Sentry is incredible, and it even eats Reckoner Bankbusters when you need it to. While we're talking about removal, I might as well tell you there's also 3 Fateful Absence in the deck. Just clean removal, and sometimes we can kill our opponent fast enough that the clue token doesn't actually matter, so that's kind of nice. But on to other more important stuff in the deck, because we are playing 4 copies of Mtg's Reign of Truth. You're probably really familiar with this in the green-white enchantments deck enough that you're rolling your eyes a little bit. Again, it's just muscle memory, and I don't blame you, but pretty much every card in deck is an artifact in this deck, so as long as we have any board presence whatsoever, Mtg's Reign of Truth is going to make all of the aforementioned creatures bigger. Sometimes it's Steel Seraph and it gets through with flying. Sometimes it's Swooping Lookout, gets through with flying and vigilance. Sometimes it's Mandible Justiciar. You give it flying and it has lifelink. You give it flying with Steel Seraph, it gets through for 1,000,000 because of this. So just a game-ending card. But you know what else is? And is more new than this, is Plated Onslaught. I was carrying 4 of these for a while, but I don't think you need 4, because if you do that, Arena just puts 3 of them in your hand every single game. And that kind of sucks, because you don't need an abundance of these. Usually 1 is enough to win you the game, especially considering absolutely no one in Standard knows that this card exists. No one sees it coming. I cannot tell you how many games I've won with this deck, because the opponent was like, yeah, that damage doesn't kill me. And then it turns out it totally does. And finally, for the main deck, there's an Eater of Virtue. Why not? I mean, we got a creature with flying and vigilance in the 1-drop slot. So cool. Every single creature after that thing dies can be flying and vigilance. We've also got to do with lifelink. So like, you know, sure. But yeah, that's the entire deck. I'm going to send you over to Arena Dev real quick so he can talk to you just a little bit to close it out before we move on to the next. Hi, everybody. I am Arena Dev. I am mostly here for you to take screenshots and for visual learners and whatnot. I have no real purpose beyond that, other than to hold on this particular screen for 10 seconds or so until you have seen the deck and not just me flashing up card images on screen while I tell stupid jokes. So this is the entire deck all together, all at once, so it's together and you can see the entire thing. See? All the cards that I said are in the deck are in the deck. Is this part of the video really necessary? That's the existential homework I'm going to send you home with. Now, up next is a best of 3 deck that is a little bit like the Artifact Aggro deck, and then I try to build it pretty much every season for the last couple of years. But honestly, my obsession with big blue midrange goes back much farther than my obsession with Artifact Aggro. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure our first ever gameplay video on the channel was Mono Blue My Favorite Cards, and it wasn't a very good deck back then. Even with Muyan Link. Remember Muyan Link? What an awesome planeswalker, but Actually wasn't that great in practice, like 9 times out of 10. So sad. But right now, we actually do have a pretty decent blue mid-range list. And I know if you know me whatsoever, maybe it's your first time here and you don't know this about me, but I am always whinging about counterspells. I just don't like control players very much, or at least that's the rap I get, you know what I'm saying? So I get some of you out there like, Dev is obsessed with making a mono blue mid-range deck. That's odd. Actually, I do this specifically because I don't much care for counterspells, because usually this is a best of 3 deck where the main deck concession is that there are no traditional counterspells. Note how many qualifiers there were in there. They'll come up later, but one way or the other, I am always trying to make a blue mid-range sort of creature-based deck that just plays a dude on curve every turn, and we'll see how well that does. And this season, we actually got one of the best versions of this that I've seen in like 5 years. So let me show it to you. Now, first of all, let's play creatures on curve like I was saying. We'll start off with 4 copies of Ledger Shredder. Pretty important guy in like multiple formats right now. It's just one of the best creatures in not only, I was going to say in Standard, but I'm not actually sure it's one of the best creatures in Standard. Technically one of the best creatures in Legacy last time I checked, so that's a pretty nice little badge of honor. But one way or the other, this is just one of the best blue creatures we have access to if we're going to be playing dudes on curve. So let's play this. Filters cards, gets bigger, flies, nice little stats to start off with. Ledger Shredder is awesome. I've also got 2 Surge Engine and 2 Suspicious Stowaway in this deck. I just can't decide between these guys. It should probably be 4 of one of them, and that one of them should probably be Surge Engine, which is actually the kind of more performing card for me this season. Surge Engine is actually great. Suspicious Stowaway's ability is not something I really want 4 of either, but both of these guys being semi or entirely unblockable, depending on which one you're talking about, is really sweet for like not only early but mid game and even sort of late game reachy kind of damage. So really like these. You know, one of them filters cards. Make sure you get stuff that you actually need, whether it's lands to play the 5 drops or the 5 drops themselves. And then the other one actually gets through for big chunks of fat damage in the mid and late game, which can be important too. But to finish off the 2 drops, I'm playing 3 Malevolent Hermit. This is where some of those qualifiers go in. There's no main deck traditional counterspells, and this is not what I would call a traditional counterspell, but it is a dude. It's a dude. I can play dudes, and I guess it's okay if those dudes counterspells. I know I'm kind of breaking my own rules a little bit here, but Malevolent Hermit, if you're going to make a deck like this, is just way too tempting to play. I don't get main deck counterspells. I can only play creatures. I'll play a counterspell on a stick. Now in the 3-drop slot, I'm playing not only Ether Channeler, but Dream Shackle Geist. These guys are awesome. If Shackle can stay out, Rusty Shackleford can stay out for more than a couple of turns, then suddenly this is doing a bunch of work for you, whether it's actually helping you get in for damage by tapping stuff down or making sure your opponent doesn't get in for damage by freezing stuff down. Just Dream Shackle, dream come true. Dream Shack. I like it. Dream Shaquille O'Neal. But the other one, Ether Channeler, this is a great card. I have wanted this card to be good for a while, and I actually just talked about it in like my favorite cards video. So I'm not going to say much about it here, but again, I'll reiterate once more that a Mana War that also draws cards or makes a body. Like, all these things are awesome. Now in the 4-drop slot, I'm playing 3 copies of Inventive Iteration because it is wrong to play 4 copies. It is probably wrong to play 3 copies, but I really like this card. And I just can't really help myself. This is still kind of mono blue, my favorite cards, but this time it just kind of works out. You know, yet another bounce effect. So again, we just annoy people that are trying to play 4 and 5 drops and stuff. That's nice. But it also draws cards and becomes a dude. And you would not believe how many times the ability on this thing matters. You'd think that it won't at all, but then suddenly you cast 2-drop, 3-drop, and your opponent cannot cast spells. Now in the 5-drop slot, I've got 2 Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. I do have this card. It's good. Draws cards, makes guys. Good card. Hard to beat once it's on the table, especially if you're able to kind of set it up right. Just great. Yes, Teferi, awesome. But I've also got a copy of Sphinx of Clear Skies. Yeah, cards in the deck. This is a 5-mana 5/5 flyer with Ward 2. That's not bad. Just in and of itself, it's not bad. And all of that plus, when it does combat damage, draw a card. Shit, that's great. That's actually sick. So I'll take just drawing 1 off of this, but with the occasional Trialman play or whatever, like, it'll do better than that. So I'm just playing 1 of this, but I am in full justification / rationalization mode because I need you to know There's a reason I'm playing this card. There's also a reason I'm playing the one all-seeing Arbiter. Yeah, well, I've seen this in a couple of people's Reanimator decks over the last year or so, and those people are brilliant. This card is much better than you think it is once it's on the table. It's just all about getting it on the table. But you see, we're not done. We still have to play some spells in this deck. We're not just all creatures and planeswalkers and such. We got to draw some cards, so I'm on one copy of Memory Deluge and one copy of Flow of Knowledge, because there's a ton of islands in the deck, you see. Pretty simple to deduce why you would play this card in a mono blue deck. I've also got a copy, or two, it's actually 2 copies, of Fading Hope in the deck. And I want to tell you about this because they have already clued you in on the fact that it's here and that there's a bunch of bounce effects in the deck. You might be thinking, man, there's a lot of bounce effects. But the thing is, blue actually has an incredible 1-mana removal spell that no one ever talks about, unless you're doing cosplays or whatever of the creature that's on the card. I've seen that a few times, but haven't really seen too many people play the blue Swords to Plowshares, although I won't really go that far. Witness Protection isn't necessarily a blue Swords to Plowshares. I do call it a blue Swords to Publicly Traded Shares. Do you get it? Because he's a legitimate businessman. Puns aside, and I'm pretty terrible at them. I don't know why people think, oh, that guy's the guy that's got good puns. No, I don't. Anyway, just all that aside, this card is phenomenal. This card is unbelievable. Have you played with Witness Protection? It's so good, man. It's just 1 mana to wipe that Sheoldred or Phyrexian Obliterator or Vindicator, for that matter, or just anything else in between, under, or above those things, you know? Oh, you got an AO out and you think you got a 5/4 flyer, you're going to do a bunch of cool stuff when it dies. No, you're not. For 1 mana, let me shut anything down in the world. Just 1 mana. It's a single. It's a great card. And it actually kind of makes this deck worth playing right now. I think more than any other card, the fact that blue has a 1 mana piece of more or less completely hard and unconditional removal is kind of the secret sauce. But to finish it off, we're playing the other best blue removal spell in Standard, a single copy of Blue Sun's Twilight. I would actually kind of like to play more of this card, but I'm loath to cut anything at this point. I think I've got the deck in pretty much the shape I'd like for it to be in right now. So if you want to cut something for another BST, then like, be my guest. I could tell you how many times. I was going to say, I can't tell you how many times I've won off of BST, but it's probably like 4, somewhere in that realm. So it's a nice little card. And even if it doesn't win you the game outright, sometimes it'll create the opening or the space, the breathing room that you need to actually win some of the other times. As far as that sideboard goes, let me read that out to you real quick. We got 2 copies of Fading Hope to bring it up to a full play set against aggro. Filigree Silex against small ball aggro decks like Mono Red. We're mostly trying to beat them. We've also, though, got 2 Negate and 2 Disdainful Stroke, because another thing we have to beat is dang old Invoke Despair and Sheoldred and Obliterator and like all the other 4 and 5 and 6 drops in this format that are just like highly playable. So let's do something with those. We've also got a Karn Silex in the deck as a colorless sweeper. Again, we don't like creatures. 2 Phasings of Zalfir. We don't like creatures. If we have to kill them all, we will. That's why we're also playing 2 Consuming Tide. There's a lot of sweepers just in the sideboard. That's because we're kind of shelling up in most games post board. We've also got 1 copy of Essence Scatter just to kind of keep the counterspell theme going in the sideboard there. And we've got a couple of copies of Flow of Knowledge. If we need to draw cards in long games, this will do that. Now it's time for the overview. So he's been sitting here the whole time, just haven't you? You've been waiting to get a word in, right? All right, let's go to Arena Dev and see what he's got to say about the blue. Hi, everybody. It's Arena Dev again, using the coffee break voice to show you Big Blue. Have you absorbed the deck? Have you taken a screenshot? Do you plan on taking a screenshot? If not, that's fine. I just hope that you're enjoying this part of the video. It's a good part of the video and was quite well thought out. I stand by that. All right, everybody, we are down to the last one, and this is the deck that I actually think is probably not only the best in terms of like win percentage that I've experienced with it, but also just probably the most pure enjoyment that I've had playing a deck in Standard this season. And it's not one that I try every single year, like Big Blue or Artifact Aggro or whatever. This is one that I've just been playing for the last few months. And again, these last couple of sets have added a good number of cards to this deck. We're going to look at Boros tokens next. Now, the basic idea with this thing is that we have token producers in both red and white, but those colors also have a fair number of sweepers. So we get to play things like By Invitation Only as a 3 of, and we get to play things like Brotherhood's End as a 3 of. So total of 6 sweepers in this deck. And honestly, I'm thinking about upping the buy invitation only, because this is the card that wins us basically more games than any other on the spot, because you see, we're a tokens deck. We very often have like 9 dudes on the board. So if our opponent has like 3 dudes, which they usually do, we can just say sack 3 guys. Well, no, we still have 6 guys if you're doing the math correctly, and I hope you are, because it's fairly simple math. So sweepers and token producers, a pretty easy little concept here, but what is the token producers? Well, you might have known that we are, of course, we're playing things like Wedding Announcement. I've already mentioned that. It just seems like an obvious one. Probably the best token producing card in the format, and then gives you an anthem from all your guys. So you play Wedding Announcement, but you also get to play 4 copies of Urabrass Forge, because this Phyrexia set what just had come out in. So this is the whole reason I wanted to build this deck in the whole dang old first place. We can keep the board relatively clear with sweepers and red and white removal and stuff like that. Urabrass Forge is going to make a boy every single turn, and that boy gets pretty big after a couple of weeks go by. We got 2 copies of Skrelv's Hive in here. I really don't think we need to play like 4 of this. We don't have a whole lot of stuff that like gains life, and maybe we're in an aggro matchup and this hurts us more than it helps us. And I know that that's never been a good excuse when it comes to Bitter Blossom type cards, and Critter Blossom is really no exception, but I still think that this is not the kind of tokens deck that is trying to win on turn 5. This is the kind of tokens deck that's trying to extend the game and win on turn like 14 a good bit of the time. So with that in mind, I just don't want to take damage like 7 turns in a row unless I can help it, and I really don't want multiple copies of this dealing like 2 damage to me a turn. So with that in mind, I'm just playing a couple of copies of Skrelv's Hive, but it's enough. Kind of sucks that tokens can't block or whatever, but we're trying to attack with our tokens, if you remember. I've also got 4 Wandering Emperor because I'm a little stinker. It's just like the best card in Standard that fits the bill. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we need cards that make tokens? Wandering Emperor. It's an idiot's include, but it's also a necessary include. But we're not done with Planeswalkers. We're also playing 2 copies of Jaya in the deck. Now, this makes tokens. It pluses to make tokens, which is sick. There's also a ton of non-creature cards in this deck, like a whole bunch of non-creature cards. So this procs off of like everything in the deck, it feels like some of the time. So pretty easy to make those prowess dudes bigger and actually get in for real damage. But the real secret to Jaya, aside from the fact that tokens deck, she makes tokens, it's the fact that this draws big old quotation marks. We get to see more cards. There's also a Stensia Uprising in here, because why not? I have won games off of this ability, by the way. Another one no one sees coming. Like, no one even looks at it. The opponent just kind of forgets it's there. Like, oh, I guess I'll get a 1/1. Who cares? And then just deals 7 to them and they're dead. So it's kind of amazing how many people you can catch not doing the proper math or like really accounting for this card. But one way or the other, it's just a 1/1 every turn. So it's like a 4-mana Wedding Announcement. But good thing here is, even though it never gives you the anthem effect, it continues to make creatures forever, which Wedding Announcement doesn't do, and sometimes it sucks that it doesn't do that. So I'm not going to play too many copies of this card, but I think 1 is appropriate, especially considering how on theme it is. I'm also playing 4 Reckoner Bankbuster, what for draw cards within it. So we're drawing cards in some pretty good, tried and true, kid-tested, mother-approved kind of ways here. So Reckoner Bankbuster, again, is the reason I don't feel like I need things like Welcome. Any card with Welcome in the name of it. Stakasi's Welcome, Welcoming Vampire, whatever. But sometimes you can throw a gang of dudes out there to crew this guy. He technically makes tokens, so he is on theme, thank you very much. And just drawing all those cards is important in a mid-range deck. So yeah, play this. I'm also playing a single Sarah Paragon, what to get my Urabrass Forge and Wedding Announcements and my Skrelv's Hives back when they die and stuff. I'm only playing, again, 1 copy of this. I don't think we need like too many. It's not like integral to the game plan or anything like that. It's just like, if we get it, it could be nice. And the rest of the deck is removal. We've got 1 copy of Strangle, 2 copies of Fateful Absence. There's 3 of Braids, 2 Ossification in the deck. I mean, we're coming strapped with a bunch of different weapons. We got the whole, whatever it's called. Is that a bandolero? It's called something else, but one way or the other. I don't know words. Hey everybody, it's Arena Dev breaking in before other dev can even announce me to show you what this deck looks like on the Arena client. Again, I think that's the point of this part, is so you can, instead of having him show you the cards one by one, you just see the entire deck at one time, and maybe that makes it better for some people. Everybody takes in information differently. See, and Dev didn't even tell you about this Mirex in the deck, that other Dev. That inferior dev did not tell you that there was a Mirex in this deck, did he? Maybe it was in the text, but did he point it out? No. So there, I'm finally good for something. I can tell you there's a Mirex in this deck. But seriously, that's it. That's all I got for this one. So just hit me up in the comments section. Let me know all your feelings down there. I'm not your therapist, but I'll listen, right? Let me know all your feelings about the video down there in the comments section. And I suppose you can do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Just like the video, subscribe if you haven't done it yet. I'm serious. If you haven't done it, what are you doing? Subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. I need those numbers to go up to validate me. So that's being a content creator, everybody. But aside from that, you can check me out on Twitch. I play Magic, probably not so well, but we have an awful lot of fun over there on twitch.tv/SPMTGDev. And if you want, you can support me over on Patreon for just $1 a month. It'll make things look better around here. You see how I'm standing up with the mic and the set looks all nice and the videos have gotten better lately, and it's all because of Patreon supports. If you want to be one of those people that's responsible for making the channel better and also making sure I can like pay my mortgage every month or whatever. I would really appreciate it. Link in the description for not only those things, Twitch, Patreon, whatever, but also all of these deck lists. And I am affiliated with TCG players. If you buy those deck lists through the link, I get a little bit of scratch that way too. It's just however you want to support the channel means a lot to me. Even if all you want to do is watch the videos, that does support the channel. And I appreciate you being here. But I guess I'm done. I remember like 5 minutes ago when I said I was done. I'm actually done this time. Love you guys. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.